So what happens is in many, many cases, the atheists have discovered, these atheist socialists have discovered that they need to give people something to believe in because people constantly seem to want to believe some kind of faith. They want to have some kind of faith. So what they do is they go like, oh, we've just removed their faith and then we need to give them something back. And of course, the very next thing is they then make up a religion that serves as a substitute. Okay? Wesley Curry, you're off topic. Stop talking nonsense. I don't have time to listen to nonsense. Okay? So I'll put you in timeout if you make another off-topic dumb statement, and then I'll ban you. Okay? Now, the worship of reason, the atheist religion. So, some atheists now sought to replace Christianity with their own belief system. They called it the cult of reason. And this was the very first state-sponsored atheistic religion. So the French atheists, after killing all the Christians and destroying hundreds of churches, they decided, okay, well, we're going to start a religion. It's going to be an atheistic religion. It's going to worship reason. And notice the theme here, it is based entirely upon the Greek and Roman style, which was entirely pagan. Just like that story I told you in the beginning, they went back to the model, the Greek and Roman pagans, and they had a woman dressed as a pagan goddess. Okay, so it was a godless alternative to churches where citizens could hear sermons that instilled virtue with no biblical language. They were supposed to speak of the virtues of science. Isn't that something atheists do today? They speak of the virtues of science and rational thinking. Okay, and then, so churches were then converted into temples of reason, devoted to worship of reason, personified as a woman bearing a torch to symbolize enlightened thinking. Now, in many of the stories, the early stories, it seems that they took a prostitute or they took a dancer and they laid her naked across the altar at the Notre Dame Cathedral and others. But this is what they did, and they had a whole festival. They had services. The atheists made up their own holiday for it, the Festival of Reason, held on November 10th, 1793 at Notre Dame. The altars were rededicated to truth and liberty. Now, when they say liberty, again, this is like equality. It's not equality, it's the elimination of hierarchy, right? And making everyone the same. It's sameness. It's shapeless, formless. And when they say liberty, they don't mean freedom. They mean the removal of moral constraints so that you have no constraints upon your immoral behavior. Now, understand these things became basically pride parades, orgies, drunkenness. So despite these lofty themes, the festival was not so much a dignified ceremony, but rather a sensual spectacle, akin to the Mardi Gras. Let's just say these things got sexually out of hand. So reason based on the Enlightenment. Now the cult of reason was based on the principles of enlightenment and anti-clericalism. In other words, we hate the priests. Its goal was the perfection of mankind through the attainment of truth and liberty by murdering all the priests. And its guiding principle was to exercise reason. It encouraged congregational worship and devotional displays based on reason. That sounds a little Christian, doesn't it, Thaddeus?
Yeah, I mean, this is pure secular, right?
Uh-huh.
Congregational worship.
Yeah, yeah. Clayt the JW. Yes, we'll have to be doing quite a bit on this. I've got over 100 pages of slides at the moment, and I've got more. So yeah, it's going to be, so this is the very first one, and it's the first time I'm running through this. So, okay, yeah. So the first festival, okay, was at the Cathedral in Notre Dame. That was the largest one. And the de-Christianization of the churches where these Festival of Reasons were held were very dramatic. Now, according to historian Simon Schama, the churches were stripped of all priestly objects. There were in any case urgent practical reasons for the despoliation. Church bells were needed for arms foundries to go make weapons, gold and silver for the Republic's treasury, or they needed a little bit of money. Though a great deal of the latter certainly found its way into the pockets of de-Christianizers. Oh boy, sounds familiar. But there was also pure vandalism on a massive scale. You have no idea. I've read through oh my God, the amount of destruction was enormous. The destruction of historical pieces, the destruction of historically valuable old ancient pieces was incredible. This is the guy, very, very well-known historian. So the Bishop of Paris and the clergy were to attend in order to publicly renounce their belief and functions as minister of the Catholic Church, declaring that they would recognize no public worship but that of liberty, equality, and fraternity. This is your family, so the family unit must be abolished. We are all the same, no one is wiser, no one is better, everyone's equal. And liberty, in other words, there are no moral constraints in your behavior. And these also would be the equivalent of communist struggle sessions. Thaddeus, it looks like you want to say something?
Well, I was just thinking of the slide a couple back when you reread Liberty here, and
Hmm.
it said they, despite being devoted to this lofty goal of liberty, they became sexual debauchery.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
well, aren't those one and the same actually? If you're free from any kind of moral constraint, can't you just uh, isn't that the natural thing that's going to happen? Is the this kind of sexual debauchery?
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened. And that is exactly what happened. So, the opening words were given by a Prussian nobleman. Now, the Prussians come from a pagan background, okay, that's a long story, who was instrumental in the French Revolution, named Anacharsis Clootz, and he declared that the Republic would contain but one God only, the people. Some people, so that's worship of man in the image of man, and some people describe the festival of reason as lurid, licentious, or scandalous, debauched. Debauched, a good word. Now think modern pride parades. Let's have a look at the word lurid. The definition of lurid: causing horror or revulsion, something gruesome. In other words, people were disgusted by this. Okay? It's shocking, right? Now, lurid, for the example, the tabloids gave the lurid details of the floating wreckage and dismembered bodies. Notice this doesn't come across as reasoned and awesome. This comes across as sick and disgusting. Then licentious, okay? Disapproving, especially of a person or their behavior, sexual in an uncontrolled and socially unacceptable way. This was what reason led them to.
Well, yeah, this is where the liberty's leading, right? Because it's socially unacceptable. They're changing what's socially, or at least trying to change what's socially acceptable. Take behavior that's always been seen as wrong and inappropriate, and change it. And that's the great revolution. It has nothing to do with reason.
Yeah,
I mean, not really. It's really about sexuality.
yeah, lust, quite bluntly. Understand? So remember, they do say we are not Christians. We do the opposite of what the Christians do. They actually that exists as well. Then we come to Robespierre, man of terror's state cult. So then this was an embarrassment. This cult of reason, this worship of reason. These people were anything but reasonable. These atheists that claimed that they were following reason after they murdered something like 265,000 people. But after this embarrassment, Robespierre achieved dictatorial power and decided to establish his own state religion, called the Cult of the Supreme Being. Right. So the new deistic religion was intended to curb the excesses, moral excesses, immoral, associated with the de-Christianization movement and the replacement of Catholicism with the new religion. It briefly lasted to the spring and summer. It lasted for a year. Okay?